This is Jewish Spotlight, a weekly television program presented by Chabad Lubavitch of Long Island, featuring various aspects of modern Jewish life and Jewish culture. Now, here is your host, Rabbi Tuvia Teldon.
Mazel Tov. That's what we say when we have a Jewish wedding, we have a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah, a special occasion in the Jewish world, an occasion for everybody to celebrate. It means that we wish somebody good luck, we wish them many, many blessings from God for the future that they have to look forward to. And in the case of a wedding, it's probably one of the most exciting Jewish events that we have during the course of the year and in the lifetime of a person. And there's so much about the wedding that Judaism teaches us that it's not just for the event itself to make that one day a special day, but each individual detail is something that's meant to give the bride and groom a special path, a special lesson, a special way to relate to the future and to solidify their relationship to a much greater degree. So we have with us today an expert, a total expert on the meaning of that day of the wedding. It just so happens it's the person who I was under the canopy with many, many years ago, and I won't say how many, but my wife is here to share with us some of her insights, and we're going to discuss the meaning of that day. And I think you'll find it very interesting because there are so many beautiful things about a Jewish wedding. If you've been to it or if you haven't been to it, it's something to wait for. So I want to introduce my wife, Chaya Teldon.
Hello.
How are you tonight?
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
All right, let's get right into it. We have two people, a boy and a girl, a young man and a young woman. They are very interested, whether it be they're in love, whether it be they have a blind date, whatever it might be, they decide to get engaged. What happens after that? What are we dealing with? What are the dynamics that go on between these two individuals as far as Judaism and the Torah see their relationship?
Okay, actually you said two individuals, but in truth, Hasidic philosophy tells us that marriage is the unification of one soul that was split at birth, and this is the reunification of two halves of soul. So right from the start, marriage is actually not 1 + 1 = 2, but rather half plus half equals one soul. So it's a very spiritual beginning to hopefully a lifelong relationship.
Interesting. I've told grooms before and brides that part of the preparation for the day of the wedding itself is to do tshuva, which means to return to God. What does that mean? To clear our slate, to clean our act up a lot. Because let's say you're going to be merging two halves of something. You're going to be bringing them back together, whether it be by soldering or by gluing. What do? You clean off the surface as much as possible in order to make sure that the union should be as pure a union as possible, to make sure that that reuniting of the two parts should be able to last a long time. And similarly with the two half souls, you want to make sure that they clean up their act as much as possible. So the day of the wedding itself, in fact, is compared to a Yom Kippur. A Yom Kippur, a day where they fast until the time of the wedding, as long as it's not a special holiday or Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the new month. And there's the wearing of the white kittel, the white garment by the groom, which represents the day of Yom Kippur also, and that we are white like the angels, clear of any sins.
And of course the bride wears white, alluding to purity and to that day of cleansing and of purification as well.
Right. Can you share with everybody, why do we always have a chuppah outside? What's the special Jewish tradition for that?
Okay, it's customary, certainly amongst Hasidim and many other branches of Judaism, to get married under the stars, at least, even if it's during the day, if you're getting married inside, but there should be very often a skylight so that you be under the stars, that your blessing should be as bountiful as the stars. We, of course, have the custom to get married outside no matter what the weather. So in addition to praying for a long, healthy life together, I think somebody sneaks in over there, there should be good weather as well. The canopy is open on all four sides. That alludes to many things. First of all, like Abraham's tent, there was a door on each side that we should bring in guests, that it should be an open home, open to all good things, and to bring light in as well. Now, one of the other reasons why we stand under a canopy is a very, very beautiful concept. The Hebrew word for man is ish, and for woman is isha. They share two common letters in Hebrew, an aleph and a shin. The third additional letter in the word for man is a yud, and in a woman is hey. Those are the two letters of God's name. So this alludes to the concept that marriage is really a partnership of three, the man, the woman, and God. And if we take that letter away from each word, we have the Hebrew word eish, which means fire. Now we know that fire can build and warm, or it can, God forbid, consume and destroy. So we bring a godly element into the relationship and hope that God will be the third partner in bringing this peace and harmony into the family.
Definitely. That's a very important point, and I want to go back to that because that's a key really to a successful marriage from a Jewish perspective. But let's go back into some of the other customs that lead up to the day of the wedding. First of all, we know that the groom is compared to a king and the bride to a queen. And there's a certain preparedness that they make in order to be able to lead up to that day where they're assuming that special role. And there is a shomer, some have the custom of guarding and escorting them during the week beforehand, and during that week they don't see each other, which is a beautiful custom. Maybe
Can you
explain the
imagine?
reason for that custom.
They
For a
don't
lot of
see each
people,
other.
that's right. That's a very strange thing. Why shouldn't the bride and the groom see each other the week before the
And they
wedding?
don't even speak to each other. First of all, just on a practical level, everybody probably is so tense and so nervous, and last-minute arrangements and family arriving and frustrations if something didn't arrive on time. So this affords the two of them space to develop on their own, to prepare their own, and to not get into any last-minute arguments, which I think is a really very,
Sounds
very good
practical.
idea. Also, the moment when the ceremony begins, the groom is led to the bride with big entourage. Some people have very lively music. Some people have very serious, mellow music.
This is during the reception.
During the reception, when the groom will now be led to the bride, usually with candles, as it alludes to light. There should always be blessing under, at all happy occasions. And this is the first time that the bride and groom have seen each other in a week. He veils the bride, reminding us of the time of Leah and her sister Rachel, and the groom pulls down the veil of the bride, and then they go outside to the ceremony. It's customary also at that time for the parents to bless the bride and to bless the bride, and the groom is usually accompanied by his friends and relatives, and it's really a very, very heavy moment in terms of the ceremony when the two souls are really coming together.
Right. I just want to reiterate also that 1 week of separation is such a key time, and I recommend it to all the weddings that I'm involved in, all the different brides and grooms, because if you just, the night before you see your future husband or wife, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. So it takes away a little bit of the specialness.
And the drama, sure.
Right, there's a longing there if you don't see each other for a full week, where the day of the wedding, there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction just to be able to finally get to see each other, and excitement, literally excitement about it.
Now, many of the customs come from the giving of the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, when it was considered to be a marriage between the Jewish people and God and the Torah. So the mountain hovered over the Jewish people, or it's alluded to, that represents the canopy. Flowers, it says, sprouted on the mountain. So we have flowers. You don't have to get carried away or crazy from the flowers, but flowers to bring festivity. There was a contract. The 10 Commandments were like the marriage contract between God and the Jewish people. And here we have a ketubah, which is a legal binding document between the groom and the bride. And actually, it's to the most part the responsibility of the groom to his other half. He has
right, where the groom commits himself to providing for all of her needs, to taking care of her, and also any type of monetary needs that she might have if for whatever reason he passes away. And of course there's also arrangements in Judaism that if things wouldn't work out, there's such a thing as a get, as a divorce, which we have had speakers on this show before to talk about the meaning, but we're not going to mix into that now because we want to concentrate on the good stuff, not the bad stuff.
The good side.
Right, not the hard parts.
Under the canopy, the groom presents the document, the ketubah, to the bride, and it becomes her legal possession.
Right.
She's supposed to know where that is at all times.
Right. Now, one thing that takes place under the chuppah, the bridal canopy, which I think is very much misunderstood, is when the woman goes around the man 7 times, goes around at the beginning of the service. And
you mean it's not that she's running circles around him right from the
well,
beginning?
that he'll find out very soon. But what is the symbolism behind those 7 circles that the woman makes around the man? She's escorted like a queen by her parents and by very often his parents as well. It's a very special time, and the music is playing. It's a solemn time. It's a preparation for getting ready for the wedding ceremony itself.
Okay, one of the explanations is that each partner in the marriage has to contribute or allude to their contribution of totality. She encompasses him 7 times. 7, it says, Kol hashvim chavivim, all sevens are beloved. She encompasses him 7 times to show she's giving her total being. He then presents her with a ring, which traditionally has no engravings or no etchings in it. That can be done after the ceremony at another time, because life has enough difficulties and bumps and ruts, so we want it to start off as smooth as possible. But the groom contributing his efforts at totality is presenting her with the ring. It's totally encompassing. The fact that both of them stand together under a chuppah, under a canopy, surrounded together, is God's hinting at his contribution of totality. So there again you have the idea of 3 and total encompassment.
Interesting also, very often the custom is for the bride and the groom to be facing towards Jerusalem, wherever they might be, to make sure they're facing, so their focus is on that this ceremony is taking place, as you mentioned before, with a third partner. I just want to mention also another explanation for why the bride goes around 7 times. Because in the times of Joshua, we know that the Jews went around the town of Jericho 7 times. What did? They blew the shofar,
and the walls,
then the walls came
tumbling down.
But what are the walls? The walls represent any walls that might be between the bride and the groom, whether it be walls of communication, walls that might separate them in some way, so that she goes around in order to make sure that this is the beginning of bringing down any walls whatsoever, which I found to be a very nice explanation in and of itself. So that's one point. Okay, now let's get back a little bit. I want to go back to some of the customs themselves, but jump ahead to what you talked about in terms of bringing God into that relationship. You know, when you take 2 people and you, the week after the wedding, and for people who know each other very, very well before the wedding, so how does the wedding make something different? How does the wedding date make something unique and transform this relationship into a marriage, into something with kedusha, with holiness, with specialness? And a part of that is really infusing God into that relationship in a way that it wasn't there perhaps before, because we all know that taking 2 people from different cultures, different backgrounds, whatever they might be, whatever their different personalities might be, it takes a tremendous bridge and a lot of communication, a lot of work, and a lot of help from above. And of course, there are plenty of people who don't believe in God who are married and happily married, but there's a special way of relating when you bring that third partner into the relationship. Can you talk a little bit about how to do that and what the ways of doing that would be? How to relate to each other, bring into consideration a belief in God, a trust in God, and a knowledge that we're here in this relation for a purpose, and it's bashert. There's a purpose for why we are together and why these 2 half souls have been reunited.
I think just remembering that that's a common denominator, really, that there's a partnership here, so that if the 2 people in the relationship disagree, you have to remember that there's a third partner. Even if it would be like a business, there's somebody else to consult. Let's look at an outside opinion. Let's find a commonality in the relationship. In addition to religious acts where the family might give charity together. This is one of the ways of making their home not just a physical place to dwell, but bringing acts of goodness and kindness into the house. To bring a spiritual dimension into the home would be to figure out, you know what kind of special things do we want to do together, whether it's going to services for the Shabbat, celebrating holidays together. In fact, I saw something very, very beautiful recently on a wedding invitation. Somebody asked, they wrote to their guests, please join us in the following mitzvah, following commandment. And I don't remember if it was bringing old pair of glasses or books to donate. So actually, to the wedding, they asked people to become partners with them, so that they could start off their new life together on an act of goodness and kindness, which I thought was beautiful. Not just a wedding gift, but do something good in our honor, which I thought was such a thoughtful thing to do.
Because very often in marriages, many marriages become dependent on how you wake up in the morning, if she looked at me nicely, if he behaves well, if he treats me well. But here we're talking about a relationship where you realize that it's not all dependent on what's going on between husband and wife. Husband and wife are there really to serve a higher purpose together. We're partners together to serve that higher purpose, which takes off a lot of the pressure, so to say, of he has to be this, she has to be that, and so forth and so on.
Meeting each other's expectations.
Right, because we're going beyond to try to serve a higher purpose together. So when 2 people are working together to serve a purpose in this world, to try to do something and accomplish meaningful actions in this world that you're talking about, it takes on a very special dimension.
I think it's also alluded to during the ceremony when the bride and groom drink from the same cup of wine after a blessing is made, that it's showing a new partnership together. We are sipping together and really want to be partners in sharing all that life deals, because you know that life sometimes goes left when you thought it was going to go right, and you have to have a solid enough foundation and believe in the partnership to want to continue despite what's happening around you. You know, a person grows older, their figure changes, their job might change, their social status might change, and if the marriage was built on those foundations and those change, then you really might be in trouble.
Right.
So it has to be to a higher purpose.
And that's why it's so important for the marriage to grow those deep roots soon in the relationship, because the deeper the roots are, the stronger the marriage will be, and the more it will be able to withstand the winds of the many things that will happen during the course of the marriage. One other thing, getting back to the ceremony itself, which is a very beautiful part, is the simcha, the joy that comes with a Jewish marriage. For those of you who have been to a Jewish marriage, or especially I've noticed in many of the Orthodox weddings, the intense celebration that takes place during these celebrations is something that people go away from totally enthralled and totally swept off their feet as far as becoming a part of it. And it's the mitzvah, the commandment, literally, of those who attend this ceremony, not just to be there to enjoy themselves, but to have a specific goal of, I want to make sure that that bride and groom are really happy today, and to do everything possible, whether it be somersaults. I've seen rabbis do somersaults, so you see people coming in
juggling
with hats, juggling hats on fire, people, I mean, just unbelievable things, costumes galore, and just anything to make, as we say in Yiddish, shtick, to be able to really make it a lebedik fine. And it's a tremendous contrast, because the beginning beforehand is very serious. It's like Yom Kippur. It's very serious, because during this time they're preparing for that merge, that union of the two halves, and they're getting ready for that explosion, that spiritual explosion to take place. But afterwards it turns into Simchas Torah. It turns into a time of celebration. And that contrast is just so incredible, and the time of the wedding itself is something so many people are just really, really enthralled by.
I think there's something else also. Traditionally, the celebration afterwards is separate. There's a men's section and there's a women's section, which to the contemporary person is totally shocking. You know, you want to go out and have a good time together. But I have noticed time and time again that when people are able to dance, first of all, you don't have to know the steps. For the most part, you can shuffle around in a circle without knowing specific steps and feel part of the celebration, and feel part of the rejoicing. One big circle, everybody sharing in that celebration. Very often the bride is in the center, and she'll call her friends, her guests, into the center, and they're able to dance with the bride or the groom as well. But this idea of not having to impress anybody when you're dancing, no game playing, you know, oh, she's dancing with him and he's looking at her, and
oh, he's a good dancer, she's not a good dancer, and so forth and so on.
It's totally eliminated at this celebration, and everybody can just be naturally, which is really, really a beautiful thing. There's no social pressure here, and I find that very, very refreshing.
Now, again, during the ceremony, the conclusion of the ceremony itself, under the chuppah, is these 7 blessings. 7 special blessings which remind us of the time even of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and how primary and how innocent and how beautiful was their relationship, created by God Himself. And to renew that, to be machadish it, to be able to connect to that relationship, and many different blessings concerning also the beauty of Jerusalem, of the city of Jerusalem, which we mentioned under the chuppah. In fact, we conclude the whole ceremony with the remembrance of the destruction of the temple that stood in Jerusalem, which is such an important part.
By breaking the glass,
which is the conclusion of the whole ceremony. So really, the ceremony, we have the reading, we have the special address usually by the rabbi, a special blessing, the giving of the ring, the reading of the kesubah, and of course the 7 blessings, and the breaking of the glass. So this is the stages of the ceremony. It's a very short ceremony. For all practical purposes, it can be done in 15 minutes, or it can be drawn out over a much longer period of time.
Depends how long the rabbi speaks.
Yeah, that usually is what happens.
Also,
depending on the rabbi.
At the very end of the ceremony, after the glass is broken, we have something called yichud, where the intimate relationship between the now husband and wife is alluded to, where the husband and wife must spend some time alone together. There are 2 witnesses that have to see that they go into this room, and they spend time there if they have been fasting on that day. That's actually the time when they break their fast. There's usually some cake and some drink there that they could spend a few minutes alone together, and then go and be entertained and celebrate with their family and friends.
And keep busy with the photographer.
Depends. Absolutely.
One of the special lines I love very much from the blessings that are said under the chuppah, and incidentally, for each of the 7 days after the wedding itself, it's traditional in the Orthodox circles to not go on a honeymoon, but every single night to make what's called Chevre Brothers, special parties to share the joy of the event of the wedding in different locales where people perhaps were not able to actually come to the wedding itself. And this takes place for 7 nights. So the Chevre Brothers is what each of these nights is called, which stands for the 7 blessings. One of these blessings blesses the bride and groom that they should have ava va'achva. They should have love and brotherhood, brotherly love, which is a very, I think, a meaningful type of statement, because it shows us the love itself can be a very, even a physical love. It can be a strong draw that the husband and wife can have towards each other. But there's also an achva, a love which has nothing to do with physical whatsoever, which is totally ethereal, which is totally based on communication, on getting to know the person, and getting to understand the person, and being able to really share and give of each other, just as there might be a brotherly love. And this is a very special blessing, which really alludes to a certain degree to the fact that during marriage, there are the laws of family purity, about going to a mikveh, about men and women separating from each other 10 to 14 days of the month, not having any physical contact, where they have to develop this type of communication, this type of brotherly love.
Essential communication.
Yes, which physical love can easily cover over and doesn't necessarily always deal with the inner issues that a husband and wife can often have to deal with. And this forces the two to have to develop that kind of sensitivity to each other where physical relationships can't reach. So that part of the blessing is one that I like very much. I want to go on also to after the Chevre Brothers. Things settle down a little bit. Bride and groom have got all their gifts. They move into the apartment. They put up their mezuzahs. They hopefully kosher their home in order to be able to make sure they live in a home where the food will be kosher. And then they get down to work and they start the communication process. And that communication process, which I'm sure started long before the wedding as well, depending on the individuals and how long they knew each other and how open they are. But I find so much the communication is such a key to making that relationship a successful relationship. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the Torah says about that importance of communication?
Well, right from the beginning, we see that when God chose to create the world, he could have used any method he wanted. God could have emailed the world into existence if he wanted, and it says instead that God spoke and there was light, and God said, let there be fish, and the earth gave forth fish. So the idea of speech is a powerful one, stemming from God himself, that one must guard one's speech, one has to be careful. It says that once words are out, we cannot recall them. And in a marriage, certainly in a new relationship, one has to be very sensitive and very careful to learn the language of the other person. We don't all speak the same. We come from a family history where certain patterns were familiar to us, and now we are establishing our own family traditions, our own way of doing things. You'll do it as your family saw, and I will bring to the table what my family did. We have to create a new family history and a new tradition, just the two of us together. And I think that communication, speech, how we speak to each other, how we listen in marriage, to be a good listener is essential to a relationship.
And to learn how to open up as well, to be able to talk, to be able to express your needs. It says that God, at Mount Sinai, what did he do? And during the course of the giving of the Torah, really express, so to say, not his needs, but express his innermost desires as far as his will, what he wants from us. When we express our needs, at least we put it out on the table and say, listen, I need this. This is who I am. This is what I am. This is my makeup, my very being. At least we're sharing our very essence with our spouse, and we're letting them know what is needed in order to be able to bring that fulfillment which we want so much in a marriage relationship.
You know what I think is important, though? A lot of young couples think that they've arrived at an instant relationship. Even if they've known each other for years, marriage is a new set of rules.
Definitely. I think many people find that out the hard way.
And they are shocked, and they say, no, I'm out of here. This is not working, so it's not as I dreamed or envisioned. First of all, where are we taking our visions from? If it's from the movies, from the books, from the magazines, from videos, forget it, because that's all Hollywood. That's not reality. I think people need to know that it's not going to be instant, that it takes time to develop and cultivate a relationship. Any plant, it takes time. You have to water it, nurture it, prune it, give it vitamins, turn it to the sun if it's not, and that's essential in a relationship.
And I just want to mention also something I really enjoy sharing with the bride and groom as well, is as when God gave the Torah, he gave 3 different types of mitzvahs. Those mitzvahs that we don't understand, those mitzvahs that we do understand, And those mitzvahs that we didn't necessarily understand when they first came to us, but once we're given
With
them,
explanation.
we understand, like the Sabbath or Passover or Sukkot, we wouldn't have thought of by ourselves, or the tefillin. But after the explanation is given, we can understand it. Some mitzvahs are totally beyond logic. Some mitzvahs we would know even without the Torah, not to kill, not to steal, how to keep modest, and so forth and so on. So the same thing applies to a certain degree with a relationship. That there are certain things about your spouse that you might understand perfectly well.
Right, that are logical. It makes sense to do
and
that.
certain things that, well, listen, as I get to know my spouse a little bit better, I wouldn't have necessarily bargained for this, or I wouldn't have thought that this would be part of their personality. But once they explain to me what it's all about, okay, I can accept it and I can figure it out. And then there are those levels of our spouse that are totally beyond our understanding that we really can't understand.
I'm shocked. Surely there can't be anything about me that you don't understand. Well, that's not logical.
But this is basically...
But would it exist?
Would it exist, right. But this is something that we learn from the relationship with God. So it's not something that anybody should be embarrassed about. That it's possible in their relationship that there are things that they don't understand about their spouse, because that's just part of the very makeup of the universe and part of the makeup of the relationship
Even more
of
than
Jews
that,
and God.
I think it's so honorable to honor that area which I don't understand. How much stronger could you say you love someone than by saying even the things, that area that is beyond logic, that is so hidden and so deep that I don't understand and I might not even like, I'm going to honor and respect that. And the same thing with God. We do that. God, you're asking me to do this, to rise to the occasion. I don't understand it. You're not explaining it. Okay, because I'm in it for the long haul.
All right.
I think that's beautiful.
Very good. So after the show, you'll tell me those things about me that you don't understand?
I'll get back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much for being with us.
My
and
pleasure.
I always enjoy our conversations, and I hope you do also. I just want to close out also by, on a different note, saying something that I think is very important. We had with us a very special person who is part of our staff. We have a wonderful volunteer staff who works on this show very, very hard from week to week. And John Paper was a very special person who joined with us many years ago, was always there and always kept us always laughing and enjoyable, and very special type of person who was always volunteering for many, many different causes. And it was a pleasure to have him on board. Unfortunately, John passed away and he's no longer with us. And I just want to thank his family for the time that he was with us, and ask God for a blessing for his soul and for many, many good occasions and memories that we all have of him. In the meantime, we'll hopefully see you next week for another very interesting show from the Jewish Spotlight. Take care and go out there and do something good to make your world a better place and to be a productive person. Shalom.
בשמחת הגיולו, הנה הנה מושיע בו. שישו בשמחו בשמחת הגיולו, הנה הנה מושיע בו. שישו בשמחו בשמחת הגיולו, הנה הנה מושיע בו. שישו בשמחו בשמחת הגיולו, הנה הנה מושיע בו. הנה הוא בו, מושיע צדקנו, הנה הוא בו, בפירו ביומנו, הנה הוא בו, יבוא ויגולנו, במנו ביומנו, מושיע צדקנו.